Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo estáis? How are you? Listen, I was the last speaker on this morning session originally. And then I was confronted with the choice of speaking to 1,000 very hungry people or running the risk of you falling asleep during my presentation. I think I made the safest choice. I'm okay with that. I have no problem. I think a bigger challenge is to actually follow presentations like the ones we had this morning. As let's face it, I mean, what I do for a living is I build mobile networks, and there is nothing I can say or I can tell you that is going to be as cool as Aaron catching Pokemons in South Africa. Not to mention Divya actually manipulating your brain. That's unfair. Now, still, with those disclaimers, I'm going to do whatever I can. So I'm going to talk to you about exponential connectivity. And the best way to take you through that, I think, is to take you through 5 things, 5 ideas that may happen sometime soon, and they're going to keep the growth of connectivity going exponential. So let's start with the first one. I ordered them from like more imminent to maybe the more crazy. Let's see. The first one is democratize the network. I'll be honest to you. Maybe it's because I'm a non-native English speaker, but I had to Google that one. Democratize. What does that mean? It's not bringing a democratic system onto the network. That's for Venezuela, not for mobile networks. It's about abundance. It's about making the network accessible to everybody. It's making it almost universal. Because it's not. It's not yet. Do you know what's the proportion of the population that is not online yet? Guess. Well, it's not that bad, actually. It is more than 40%, but it's not 1/2. It's still a lot of people. Now, you may think, well, that for sure includes parts of India, parts of Turkey, rural Africa, parts of South America. Yes, you're right. But it also includes a basement in London where they don't have Wi-Fi because the fiber reach is not there and there is no coverage, and everything in between. Now, why is that? What is the reason why we mobile operators haven't rolled out infrastructure there yet? Well, the reason is common to rural part of Africa and the basement in London is cost. And what are the factors inside that cost? There are many. From, well, you may need to build a mast, pay the civil works, energy, you need to pay the rent to a landlord, operation and maintenance, many more things. But there is one that is disproportionately dominant over all the rest. You know what that is? The cost of electronic equipment. That's still the single biggest factor, and to a large extent is also driving all other factors. Now, that's interesting because almost in all industries we've seen the cost coming down exponentially. So it wasn't that long ago when the 3D printing that Scott was talking about this morning costed in excess of $40,000. And now it's below 100. And if you think on digital cameras, it was very much of the same. The cost a few years ago, it was 20,000, now it's less than, it says 79, but that's 2014, it's less than 50 now. So these 2 examples and all the rest of the industries, they all have their own situation, and the drivers to just drive this cost down are specific to them. Now, the electronic equipment of a communication network is not going to escape this. The same is going to happen. Maybe the factors are different, maybe the situations are different, but it will happen. In fact, it is happening, and we are making it happen. There is a project that's called Telecom Infra Project. Have you heard of that? Raise your hand if you heard of TIP. Not many of you. Well, it's a project that was originally set up by Facebook on the west coast of the US. And it has many operators contributing, and Vodafone is one of them. And what we're doing to drive down the cost of electronic equipment is, in essence, very simple and very similar to what happened to the personal computer a few decades ago, which is to decouple hardware from software and to open interfaces. It's not that dramatic, or it's not that rocket science. However, it works. And I can tell you, if you take the example of a small cell, which is a small cell, it's a small base station to serve, to provide capacity and coverage on tiny places, say, the cost, a couple of years ago, it was in excess of $5,000. We can have that today for $50. 50. Now, when you reach that point, the whole rollout model and the business model changes. Because at that cost, you can have that actually embedded on your laptop. Your laptop may be my next base station, or your fridge, or your car. And then the rollout becomes crowdsourced and exponential. And then you will reach that basement. And then, of course, the economics to roll out coverage in the rural parts of Africa are very different for the operators. So much so that, well, I use this example of maybe the next 5G base station is somebody's school project, where I tell you what, my 16 years old is building a base station. It's not a 5G one, but it's a 4G one as a school project with a Raspberry Pi. And I think it's going to cost me less than 50 euros. So that is going to keep the network growing. That's going to, for sure, reach the next billion people and keep the connectivity growing exponentially. So that's one. Second example I chose is drones. Now, drones in themselves, I think they are exponential. Little needs to be said about that. They will bring a revolution to transport, to delivery, to surveillance, to monitoring. However, they're not taking off yet. They don't really lack potential. So what it is that they're lacking? Any guess? What are we missing? Safety. Yes, we're missing control. Anybody was in a week in December trying to land or maybe take a plane? Two guys playing with a drone brought the second biggest airport in the UK to a complete halt during more than 2 days. That's really bad. It tells you many things. So the regulation itself is very restrictive. You can't fly beyond line of sight, and certainly you can't fly anywhere near airports, and you can't fly over cities or populated areas. But there is no way to control that. These things are so small that they escape the conventional radar. And even if you spot them, like in Gatwick, you can't really take them down easily. You can't jam the link. You can't shoot them down. That'd be dangerous. So what we're lacking is some significant control. Now, operators, we think we have a solution for that, which is quite natural, I think. Well, how do you remote control a drone? Well, if you use the mobile coverage, that is really easy. So no longer you're subject to whatever reach you have on your controller, which is what happens today. You're controlling the drone from your remote controller. So that link goes for that long. With a mobile network in between, you actually connect to the network, and the network connects to the drone. So you can fly a drone for as long as you have coverage. You can, in fact, fly a drone from Singapore here in Madrid, which is scary. And probably that fear is one of the reasons why it's not happening. Now, but a mobile network can provide you with more things. It will provide you with identity. So every single one of your smartphones have a SIM, and that SIM is a unique identity. And behind that identity, there is your name, which is a good thing. If you want to know who's behind the drone that's flying, well, you can certainly have a name. And last but not least, we've developed a system that can geolocate any such drone, in fact, any device, even if the device doesn't want to be located. So you don't need collaboration from the device. The network will act as a radar, and it will know if there is a drone flying. Now, with all that combined, you can certainly enable and provide the local authorities with all they need to set up an air control traffic system. If you want to know more about this, just Google Vodafone EASA, which is the European Agency for Safety in Aviation, and you'll see that we are actually trialing this in Cologne with them. We are halfway through the program. It's a 2-year program, and they are really happy and really excited about the prospect of having controls in place to open the airspace so that drones can really fly over areas and in ways that are not possible today. When that happens, and it will happen, this will drive exponential growth in the connectivity of these things. Third thing, I call this the intelligence of things. I'm sure that you've read a lot about the Internet of Things. There are technologies that our industry developed, and they are already available, that drove the cost of an IoT device to less than $5. And the battery life of that went beyond 15 years. Don't expect that to be rolled out on your smartphone anytime soon. We're talking about IoT devices. They are very simple. They have to perform very simple tasks. They use very low bandwidth, and they don't have a screen. So it's a different animal altogether. But the thing is, you may have those IoT devices that cheap and with that absolutely immense battery life. That fueled prospects and forecasts of billions of devices that are going to be rolled out, and they're going to exist in the next few years. I'm sure you've seen those forecasts. Still, that's not quite happening yet. You may speculate why. I have my own opinion. I'm a runner. And being into technology and running, it's almost unavoidable that I run full of sensors, and I have a very expensive watch that gathered all the information, and then it sends it to a dashboard. And then I can check, whenever I want, I can check how far I ran last week, for how long I ran, how fast I ran it. But not just that. I get really nice graphs showing my heart rate instantaneously, how it was, my balance, right foot, left foot, the ground contact time, the stride length. Do you care about this? No, me neither. Now, if we're going to have 2 billion things connected, the fair share of each of us is probably around 1,000 things. I am anxious. I'm going to have 1,000 things speaking to me the same as my watch speak to me about my running. It's very cool. And you can go social with it. Now there are social platforms so that you can also see the KPIs of other people that you don't really know and you don't care about. But does that make you a better runner? No. It's quite useless. Now, I paid probably in excess of $500 for my watch. I'd be really happy to pay maybe €200 a year, say, for a professional service coaching me with this data. Because I'm not a physiologist, and I didn't take sport medicine, or I can't analyze this data. It means nothing to me. It's just information. Now, if someone actually would sell me a service that tells me, well, you have to run longer, or you have to train more, or you have to train less, or you need to exercise your core, or you are about to get injured, well, that would be really adding a lot of value. Now, no one is doing that for now. I think that's going to happen. And those modules that are maybe $5 and 15-year battery life will go onto your running shoes. And then maybe Adidas will contact you and push you, for a deal when they know that you've actually run your shoes for 1,000 kilometers. I'd be happy to pay for that. But that's not happening today. So on IoT, you don't want your fridge to be talking to you about how much milk there is on the fridge. You want your fridge to do shopping within boundaries. You'll give your fridge your credit card, and it'll take care of the rest. That will change this. That will make IoT go exponential. Now, we talked about your smartphone. Yesterday, I was in Barcelona. I missed the morning session. we were actually launching the first 5G smartphone. We connected that 5G smartphone to a real 5G network for the first time. It's on the press today. So that smartphone is going to be announced on Sunday. It's not public yet, so I can't tell you how it looks like. I'll tell you one thing. It looks like a smartphone. So if the question is, what's the next smartphone? Well, I'm not referring to this one. I'm referring maybe to the next one or the next one after the next one. What is it coming? What's the next change? What is the next big thing? There is a nice parallelism with music, and someone was talking about this morning. No matter if you collected vinyls or CDs or cassettes, this industry, the music industry, changed when the MP3 was introduced. At that point, you started using maybe iPods or MP3 players, and the whole business model started to change. And maybe you thought that that was, as far as the change was going to go. But actually, once the bandwidth, the connectivity was good enough, abundant enough, and wide enough for you to listen to music wherever you would be at any point in time, that was the biggest change. At that point, you stopped collecting music, and you started buying music as a service, which is what most of us are doing now. I put my 2000 CD collection onto Apple Music. It took me 2 years to sort that out. But now it works. Now, is there any parallelism with the smartphone? I think there is. So, of course, while this was happening, the storage on your device started to matter less and less. While a few years ago, you would look at what is the storage capacity of whatever iPhone you were going to buy before buying it, 16 gigs wasn't enough, you remember? It was 64, 128, whatever. Well, now that almost doesn't matter because everything is stored on the cloud. You can just store all your photos and all your music just the same. Now, what's the next thing that you think you can strip off your phone after storage? It's processing power. If you go to the demo area in the Vodafone stand, you will see a robot, a small robot, dancing robot. It's called Joselito, by the way. All its mission in life is to stand still, nothing else. It's got 2 wheels, so it's quite unstable. It's got some sensors to know about his verticality. And then it has an engine, and it acts on the engine to stand still. Simple. Except he doesn't got a brain. The poor Joselito has no brain. His brain is on the cloud. Now, the one thing we're demonstrating there is what happens when the latency goes up. If the latency between Joselito and his brain is below 10 milliseconds, everything is fine. He can stand still. You can even push it, and he will recover. Now, if you start turning up the latency, what happens is very interesting. Every 10 milliseconds of additional latency is more or less equivalent to 1 gin and tonic. We've established that equivalent based on our own experience. Now, after 3 or 4 gin and tonic, poor Joselito can't stand up anymore. So when the latency goes beyond 50 milliseconds, it will unavoidably fall. Now, what this tells you is, if the latency is good enough, if your connection is abundant enough, is present everywhere, and the latency is short enough, you can do the processing in the cloud. So to a smartphone, that means that actually, once you strip off all the storage, the next thing you strip off is CPU, and then what you have is a screen that's connected. And then someone else is figuring out what to show on that screen. You don't have an operating system. You don't have almost any software running, just a screen. That's quite thin. But once you do that, there is no reason why you can't actually parasite on other screens. If it's just a screen, you can use your car screen. There are many screens. You can use your mirror. Your table at the restaurant can actually be a screen, and you can parasite on it. What's the only thing that you don't want to lose? It's your identity. But if you keep your identity, then you can use any screen around you as a phone. So the future of the smartphone is no smartphone. It's a smartphone as a service. in the same way you listen to music as a service. And the technology that's coming, 5G, which will be rolled out this year, actually enables that. Because the biggest difference between 5G and all the previous generations is latency, indeed. Keep that thought. Now, my last idea is the evolution of the interface related to the previous thing. Screens, you parasite on other screens, you use a mirror, you use your car screen, or a television. But they are still screens. So since the internet was invented, we've been looking at the internet through a window. What's next? What's the next iteration? There was this concept of metaverse. It was first introduced by Stephenson on his novel, Snow Crash. This was written in 1992. Then it was featured on Ready Player One on 2015. It's more or less the same concept. It's a universe that's an overlapping of digital reality and actual reality, three-dimensional, persistent, and shared by everybody. A bit like Second Life, yes, and we've talked about that this morning, but it's overlapped with actual universe. Now, whether this is the next iteration of internet or not is highly debatable. And there are two things you need to believe for this to be true. The first one is that people will care about this and will want and enjoy and live a better life because of this. And the second one is that the interfaces, the technology of the interfaces will actually evolve to enable something like this. Usually, I've tried this concept with many people. There is a lot of resistance. People don't think that this is the future. And most often is because of the first factor, not the second. So they don't kind of not believe that the technology is going to enable something like this, but they think that nobody is going to care. Well, 3 weeks ago, very interesting, DJ Marshmallow, who I didn't happen to know, but maybe you do, is one of the top DJs on electronic music. He held a concert, free entrance, and attended by 10 million people, lasted for 10 minutes. I read the reviews, they were fantastic. And there's many people who think that this may have changed the live entertainment industry forever. The peculiarity about this concert is that it didn't happen on real world. It happened on Fortnite, which you may have heard about. Particularly, you may have heard, maybe if you have teenager kids, for sure you may have heard about it because it's what they spend their entire day on. It's a multiplayer gaming platform. Now, I'm not saying the concert was broadcasted on Fortnite. I'm saying it happened on Fortnite. It didn't happen anywhere in this planet on the real world. It only happened on Fortnite. And it was attended by 10 million people. So much so that we operators, we registered a spike on the traffic coming from the internet because of this. And it's not the first time. Now, you may think that, well, people don't care. I think we're wrong. I think they do. And more. It's not just a single example, but it's a very recent one. Now, one thing is true, Fortnite is still bidimensional. So you still watch Fortnite through a window. It's not immersive. So that has still to change. And I think that's a given. No matter if we all end up attending concerts on Fortnite or something else, I think there is little doubt that the way we relate to the internet is going to change, and it's going to be immersive. We will stop watching through a window sooner than we realize. Now, when that happens, the change is going to be really profound. Because the minute you start seeing an overlapping digital reality on top of the actual universe, well, there is a window of things that open. So you may think you may not care anymore about the decoration of your house because it actually may be digital. You may not have to buy art, but download it, and you can change it every week if you want. And you may not care anymore if you can't agree with your partner on what you like to hang on your walls in your house, because it may be digital reality that only you can see. You can take it as far as you want. Your clothes. No, I wouldn't do that. But at least not with the first 2 layers. But maybe maybe some elements of it. So there'll be digital reality you can only see, and it doesn't exist. And there'll be digital reality that everybody sees, and it's synchronized for everybody. Now, this will have a number of consequences, but my favorite one is, well, technology is lately blamed of isolating people. You are isolated because you are focusing on people who are not actually around you. You're just chatting, or you are interacting with people who are far away, but that is separating you from the people who's around you. Well, there is a view that if we actually embed the digital reality and we overlap it on top of the actual reality, it may actually help you enhance your relationship with the people that you have around you. And you may think of, from not forgetting your wedding anniversary, if you like, to actually taking Tinder to a completely different level. Both are valid, but the thing is, technology may help you be closer to the ones that are around you. And that's it from me. I leave you with my contact here. If you want to reach me, if you have any question, if you want to talk, please do so. Thank you so very much.